The moment Marcus opened his front door at 2 a.m. to find a trembling woman clutching an unconscious 5-year-old girl in the pouring rain, he had no idea that this single decision would either destroy his entire world or save it forever. The woman's designer clothes were torn and muddy, her face was bruised, and the child in her arms was burning with fever so severe that Marcus could feel the heat radiating from 3 feet away, and in that instant, he knew that if he turned them away, the little girl might not survive the night. "Please," the woman gasped, her voice cracking with desperation as lightning illuminated the terror in her honey-brown eyes. "Someone is following us. My daughter, she needs help. I have nowhere else to go." Marcus looked past her into the darkness of the rural Tennessee road, seeing nothing but rain and shadows, yet feeling something sinister lurking just beyond his porch light. He had his own 7-year-old son sleeping upstairs, his own struggles as a widowed father working 2 jobs just to keep this modest farmhouse standing, his own reasons to be suspicious of strangers, but the child's labored breathing made his decision for him. What was this woman running from, and why did she look like she had just escaped from a nightmare while wearing clothes that cost more than his truck? Marcus, 34 years old, stood 6 feet tall with warm brown skin weathered by years of outdoor labor, his calloused hands gentle as he reached for the sick child. He wore his usual evening attire, a faded gray Henley shirt with rolled sleeves and worn blue jeans, his feet bare on the cold wooden floor. His dark brown eyes, framed by smile lines that hadn't been used much since his wife passed 3 years ago, softened with immediate compassion. "Get inside, now," he said firmly, stepping back to let them enter. "I'll call for help." The woman hesitated for just a moment, studying his face as if trying to determine whether she could trust him with her life, and her daughters. She was perhaps 30 years old, with smooth olive skin that glowed even through the exhaustion and fear. Her long dark hair, normally pristine, was plastered to her face in wet strands. She wore what had once been an elegant cream-colored silk blouse, now torn at the shoulder, paired with tailored black pants that were caked with mud up to her knees. Despite her disheveled appearance, there was something undeniably refined about her posture, something that spoke of a world far different from this humble farmhouse. "No hospitals," she whispered urgently. "They'll find us there. Please, I just need shelter until morning. I can explain everything, I promise." Against every logical instinct screaming in his head, Marcus nodded. He carried the little girl, who couldn't have weighed more than 40 pounds, to the worn leather couch in his living room while the woman followed, her eyes darting to every window, every shadow. The child had golden brown skin like her mother, with curly dark hair matted to her forehead with sweat. She wore a pink nightgown with tiny flowers, suggesting they had fled from somewhere in the middle of the night. "What's her name?" Marcus asked as he laid her down gently. "Lily," the mother whispered, kneeling beside her daughter and stroking her hair. "Her name is Lily. And I'm Elena." She looked up at Marcus with tears streaming down her face. "I know how this looks. I know you have no reason to help us. But I swear on my daughter's life, we are not criminals. We are victims. And if you help us survive tonight, I will spend the rest of my life finding a way to repay you." Marcus disappeared into his bathroom and returned with a first aid kit, children's fever reducer, and cool wet cloths. He worked efficiently, the same way he had cared for his son through countless childhood illnesses since becoming a single parent. "I'm not asking for repayment," he said quietly, placing a cloth on Lily's forehead. "I'm asking for the truth. What kind of trouble are you in? Because if dangerous people come to my door, I have a son upstairs I need to protect." Elena closed her eyes, and when she opened them, Marcus saw a depth of pain that matched his own. "My husband, my ex-husband, is a very powerful man. He's been hurting us for years, but I was too afraid to leave. When Lily got sick 3 days ago and he refused to let me take her to a doctor because he didn't want anyone asking questions about the bruises on her arms, I knew I had to run. I took nothing but my daughter and fled in the middle of the night. We've been hiding ever since, moving from place to place. Tonight, our car broke down on this road, and I saw your light. You were my last hope. The story hit Marcus like a physical blow. He thought of his late wife, Sarah, who had been the gentlest soul he'd ever known. He thought of his son, Jalen, sleeping peacefully upstairs, unaware that the world contained such cruelty. And he thought of his own mother, who had fled a similar situation when Marcus was just a boy, finding safety in the kindness of strangers. "You can stay," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "As long as you need. No one will hurt you or your daughter in this house. I give you my word." The next few hours passed in a blur of fever management and whispered conversations. Marcus learned that Elena had been driving for 2 days straight, surviving on gas station food and sheer determination. Lily's fever was high but not dangerous, likely caused by stress, exhaustion, and a respiratory infection that had gone untreated. By dawn, after Marcus had administered proper medicine and forced both mother and daughter to eat warm soup, Lily's temperature had dropped to a manageable level and she was sleeping peacefully. It was then that Jalen came downstairs, rubbing his eyes and stopping short when he saw the strangers in his living room. He was a beautiful boy of 7, with his father's warm brown skin and his late mother's curious hazel eyes. He wore dinosaur pajamas that were slightly too short, evidence of a recent growth spurt Marcus couldn't afford to address yet. "Dad?" he asked, his voice small and confused. "Who are they?" Marcus knelt to his son's level, his heart swelling with love for this child who had been his anchor through every storm. "These are our guests, son. Elena and her daughter Lily. They needed help, so we're going to help them. That's what your mama would have wanted us to do, right?" Jalen studied the sleeping girl on the couch, then looked at Elena, who watched him with anxious eyes. After a long moment, he nodded solemnly. "Mama always said helping people is how we make the world less broken." He walked over to Elena and held out his small hand. "I'm Jalen. Do you like pancakes? My dad makes the best pancakes." Elena burst into tears, not of sadness, but of overwhelming relief and gratitude. She took Jalen's hand and squeezed it gently. "I would love some pancakes, Jalen. Thank you." She looked up at Marcus over his son's head, and something passed between them in that moment. Not romance, not yet, but recognition. The recognition of two souls who had both known loss, both known struggle, and both understood that kindness was the only currency that truly mattered. Over the following days, Elena and Lily became part of the household's rhythm. Marcus worked his day job at the local auto repair shop and his evening shifts at the grocery store, while Elena cared for both children with a devotion that surprised him. She cooked meals from scratch, cleaned the house until it sparkled, helped Jalen with his homework, and nursed Lily back to health with a mother's fierce determination. She never complained about the modest accommodations, never wrinkled her nose at the second-hand furniture or the leaky faucet Marcus hadn't been able to afford to fix. What she did do was ask questions. She asked about Sarah, and Marcus found himself telling her things he had never told anyone, how Sarah had died in a car accident on her way home from work, how he had been the one to identify her body, how some nights he still reached for her in his sleep. She asked about his childhood, and he told her about growing up poor, about his mother's escape from his abusive father, about how he had learned to fix cars and build things with his hands because he couldn't afford college. She listened to everything with such genuine attention that Marcus began to feel something he hadn't felt in years, understood. On the 5th night, after both children were asleep, Elena and Marcus sat on the porch watching the stars. The Tennessee sky was clear and endless, a reminder that the universe was vast and their problems were small in comparison. "Can I tell you something?" Elena asked quietly, her voice carrying a weight that made Marcus turn to look at her. "Anything," he said, meaning it. Elena took a deep breath. "I haven't been completely honest with you. Not about the danger, that's all true. But about who I am." She paused, seeming to gather courage. "My full name is Elena Castellanos Wright. My ex-husband is Richard Wright III, heir to the Wright Industries empire. And she swallowed hard. Before I married him, I built my own company from nothing. A technology firm that I sold for $1.2 billion 3 years before we divorced. The money is in accounts he can't touch. Marcus, I'm not a poor woman running from her problems. I'm a billionaire who escaped with only the clothes on her back because material things meant nothing compared to my daughter's safety. Marcus felt the ground shift beneath him, and suddenly every interaction of the past 5 days took on a different meaning. Had she been studying him this whole time, testing him, judging whether he was worthy of something he didn't understand? Was any of this real, or was he just a pawn in some rich person's game he couldn't even comprehend? ***. The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Marcus stood and walked to the edge of the porch, his back to her, his mind racing. He thought of every wealthy person he had ever encountered, the customers at the repair shop who looked through him like he was invisible, the executives who shopped at the grocery store and never made eye contact with the staff. He thought of how hard he worked just to keep his son fed and clothed, while people like Elena had more money than he could earn in 1,000 lifetimes. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked finally, his voice rough with emotions he couldn't name. Elena stood and walked toward him, stopping just short of touching him. "Because I needed to know if you were real. Every person I've met since I became wealthy has wanted something from me. Even my own husband married me for my money and connections, though he came from wealth himself. When you opened your door that night, you had no idea who I was. You helped us because it was the right thing to do. You've continued to help us without asking for anything in return. Do you have any idea how rare that is? How precious?" Marcus turned to face her, and in the moonlight, he saw tears streaming down her cheeks. "I'm still the same person," she whispered. "I'm still the woman who was terrified for her daughter's life. I'm still the woman who hasn't slept peacefully in years because of the monster I married. Money doesn't change what I've suffered, Marcus. It just means I can finally do something about it, and that I can help you too, if you'll let me." He wanted to be angry. Part of him was angry, at the deception, at the reminder of how different their worlds were, at the fear that everything between them had been built on a lie. But as he looked into her eyes, he saw something that couldn't be faked, genuine connection. "I don't want your money," he said slowly. "I've never wanted anyone's money. I want to earn my life, not have it handed to me." Elena smiled through her tears. "I know. That's why I trust you. That's why, for the first time in years, I feel safe." She reached out and took his hand, and the touch sent electricity through both of them. "I'm not trying to buy your affection, Marcus. I'm trying to tell you the truth because whatever this is between us, this connection, this understanding, I don't want it built on secrets. I want you to know exactly who I am and choose whether you still want me in your life." Marcus looked down at their intertwined hands, his rough and calloused, hers soft but strong. Two people from different worlds, brought together by fate and a rainy night. "I need time to process this," he said honestly. "But I'm not asking you to leave. I'm not sorry I helped you. And I'm not going to pretend these past few days haven't meant something to me, because they have." The tension between them remained, but it was no longer a barrier. It was a bridge being built, slowly and carefully, between two wounded hearts. As the days turned into weeks, their connection deepened. Elena used a secure phone to contact her lawyers, who were working tirelessly to finalize restraining orders and ensure Richard couldn't legally come near her or Lily. The divorce had been finalized months ago, but Richard had never accepted it. He had powerful friends and dangerous connections, and Elena knew it was only a matter of time before he found her. Meanwhile, Lily and Jalen became inseparable. They played together, learned together, and healed together in the way that only children can. Lily's health improved dramatically, her laughter returning along with the color in her cheeks. Jalen, who had been so quiet since his mother's death, began to bloom in the presence of a friend who understood loss and fear. Marcus watched them play in the yard one afternoon, building a fort out of old boxes and blankets, and felt his heart crack open in a way he hadn't thought possible. He's happy, Elena said, appearing beside him at the window. I haven't seen Lily this happy in years. Neither have I, Marcus admitted. With Jalen, I mean. After Sarah died, it was like part of him went quiet. Like he was waiting for something else bad to happen. But with you and Lily here, he's coming back to life. Elena turned to face him, and the air between them shifted. They had been dancing around their feelings for weeks, both afraid to make a move that might shatter the fragile peace they had built. But in that moment, with the afternoon sun streaming through the window and their children's laughter echoing from the yard, the fear seemed to melt away. Marcus, Elena whispered, stepping closer. I need you to know something. When I married Richard, I thought I knew what love was. I was wrong. Love isn't power games and control. It isn't being made to feel small so someone else can feel big. It isn't wondering every day whether you'll survive your own home. She reached up and touched his face, her fingers trembling against his cheek. Love is what you've shown me these past weeks. Patience. Kindness. Respect. A safe place to land when the whole world is chaos. I didn't come here looking for love, Marcus. But I think I found it anyway. Marcus's heart pounded so hard he was sure she could hear it. He had told himself not to fall for her, not to complicate an already complicated situation, not to let his loneliness cloud his judgment. But standing here now, with this extraordinary woman looking at him like he was the most precious thing in the world, all his resistance crumbled. I'm not a rich man, he said, his voice husky with emotion. I can't give you the life you're used to. I work 60 hours a week and still barely make ends meet. I live in a house that's falling apart at the seams. I'm not. Stop, Elena said firmly but gently. You're everything. Don't you see? You're the first man who's ever looked at me and seen Elena, not Elena's money or Elena's connections or what Elena could do for them. You're the first man who's treated my daughter like she matters just because she's a child, not because she's an heiress. You've given us safety, Marcus. You've given us peace. There is no amount of money in the world that can buy what you've given us, because it came from your heart. She leaned up and pressed her lips to his, and the kiss was everything, soft and fierce, tender and passionate, a promise and a question all at once. Marcus wrapped his arms around her and pulled her close, feeling her heartbeat against his chest, feeling for the first time in 3 years like he might actually be able to love again. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Marcus rested his forehead against hers. I don't care about your money, he said. But I need you to understand, I won't be kept. I won't be someone's charity case or project or feel-good story. If we do this, we do it as equals. I work for what I have, and that won't change. Elena smiled, and it was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. I wouldn't want it any other way. Your integrity is one of the things I love most about you. I'm not trying to change you, Marcus. I'm trying to love you, exactly as you are. But their happiness was fragile, and danger was closing in. 2 nights later, Marcus woke to the sound of breaking glass. He was out of bed in an instant, grabbing the baseball bat he kept by his nightstand, his heart pounding with primal fear. He could hear Elena scrambling in the guest room, heard Lily's frightened cry, heard Jalen calling out for him. He reached the top of the stairs just in time to see 3 men in dark clothing flooding through his front door, and standing behind them, illuminated by the porch light, was a tall man in an expensive suit with cold blue eyes and a cruel smile. Richard Wright III had found them, and Marcus knew in that moment that this confrontation would end with someone's life destroyed forever. Elena. Richard called out, his voice dripping with false charm. Did you really think you could run from me? Did you really think some backwoods mechanic could protect you from the consequences of your betrayal? Marcus moved down the stairs, putting himself between the intruders and his family, because that's what they were now, he realized. His family. Elena and Lily had become as precious to him as Jalen, and he would die before he let anyone hurt them. You're trespassing on my property, he said, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through his veins. Leave now, or I'm calling the police. Richard laughed, a cold sound that made Marcus's skin crawl. By all means, call them. By the time they arrive, if they even bother coming to this remote nowhere, we'll be long gone. And Elena and my daughter will be coming with me. She's not your property, Marcus said through gritted teeth. Neither of them are. The divorce is final. You have no rights here. Richard's smile faltered, replaced by a flash of rage that revealed the monster beneath the polished exterior. No rights? I have all the rights that money can buy, friend. Do you have any idea who you're dealing with? I could destroy your life with a single phone call. I could make sure you never work again, that your son ends up in foster care, that you spend the rest of your miserable existence wishing you had never gotten involved in matters beyond your comprehension. Elena appeared at the top of the stairs, Lily clutched in her arms and Jalen pressed against her side. Her face was pale but determined. Richard, this ends now. My lawyers have documented everything, the abuse, the threats, the financial manipulation. If you don't leave immediately, I will release it all to the press. Every investor, every board member, every society friend will know exactly what kind of man you are. For a moment, Richard's composure cracked. Elena had always been intelligent, it was one of the things that had attracted him to her in the first place. He had just never expected her to be brave enough to use that intelligence against him. You wouldn't dare, he hissed. You know what that would do to Lily's reputation, to her future. Lily's future is with me, Elena said firmly. Safe. Loved. Far from you. She pulled out her phone with one hand, keeping Lily secure with the other. I've already sent the documents to my legal team with instructions to release them if I don't check in within 1 hour. You can take us now, Richard, but you'll lose everything in the process. Or you can walk away, finally accept that this marriage is over, and salvage whatever remains of your precious empire. The choice is yours. The standoff stretched for an eternity. Marcus watched Richard's face cycle through rage, calculation, and finally, reluctantly, defeat. He was a bully at his core, and bullies were ultimately cowards. When faced with real consequences, with someone who wouldn't back down, his power evaporated. This isn't over, Richard said, but even Marcus could hear the hollowness in the threat. He gestured to his men, and they retreated toward the door. At the threshold, Richard turned back one last time, his eyes fixing on Marcus with pure hatred. You've made a powerful enemy tonight, mechanic. I won't forget this. Neither will I, Marcus replied. And if you ever come near my family again, restraining orders and legal documents will be the least of your problems. Richard's face contorted, but he left. The sound of expensive car doors slamming and engines starting faded into the night, and then there was silence. Blessed, beautiful silence. Elena collapsed against the wall, still clutching Lily, tears streaming down her face. Marcus bounded up the stairs and gathered them all into his arms, Elena, Lily, and Jalen, holding them tight as the adrenaline slowly drained from his body. It's okay, he murmured, over and over. You're safe. I've got you. You're safe. In the aftermath of that night, everything changed. Elena's legal team moved swiftly, using Richard's midnight intrusion as evidence for enhanced protective measures. Within a month, Richard was facing charges for trespassing and intimidation, his reputation in tatters as whispers of abuse began circulating through his social circles. His board of directors quietly asked him to take a leave of absence, and his access to the family fortune was severely restricted. He was not destroyed, men like Richard rarely were, but he was diminished, his power to hurt Elena and Lily dramatically reduced. Marcus watched all of this unfold with a mixture of satisfaction and discomfort. He still struggled with the disparity between his world and Elena's, still felt uneasy when she mentioned numbers that contained more zeros than his annual salary. But Elena was patient with him, never pushing, never pressuring, always respecting his boundaries while gently showing him that accepting help wasn't weakness. She started small, hiring contractors to fix the leaky roof and the broken porch steps, framing it as necessary for her and Lily's safety rather than charity. When Marcus protested, she pointed out that she was living there too, and surely she had a right to invest in her own shelter. He couldn't argue with that logic, though he grumbled about it for days. Then came the conversation about his job. Elena approached it carefully, one evening after the children were asleep, sitting beside him on the now sturdy porch and taking his hand. "I want to ask you something, but I need you to really hear me before you say no," she began. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "That's a promising start." Elena smiled but pressed on. "I know how much your independence means to you. I admire it, I truly do. But Marcus, you work 60 hours a week at 2 jobs, and you still barely have time to see your son or rest your body. That's not sustainable. It's not fair to you or Jalen." "It's called survival," Marcus said, a familiar defensiveness creeping into his voice. "I know," Elena said softly. "I know about survival. I survived 6 years with a man who made me feel worthless every single day. But here's what I've learned, there's a difference between surviving and living. You deserve to live, Marcus. You deserve to come home at a reasonable hour and help your son with homework and sit on this porch and watch the sunset. You deserve rest." "What are you suggesting?" he asked warily. Elena took a deep breath. "I'm going to start a new company. A foundation, actually, focused on providing resources for families escaping domestic violence, shelters, legal aid, counseling, job training. Everything I wish I'd had when I was trying to find the courage to leave. And I need someone to help me build it. Someone who understands hard work, who knows how to fix things, who has the kind of integrity that can't be bought." She squeezed his hand. "I want you to be my partner in this, Marcus. Not as charity, as genuine partnership. Equal say in decisions, real salary for real work, the chance to make a difference in people's lives the way you made a difference in mine." Marcus was silent for a long moment. His pride screamed at him to refuse, to insist he didn't need help, to go back to his 60-hour weeks and his exhausted nights. But then he thought of Jalen. He thought of all the bedtimes he'd missed, all the school events he'd had to skip, all the moments slipping away while he worked himself into an early grave. He thought of his mother, who had escaped abuse with nothing, who had struggled alone because there was no one to help her. And he thought of Elena, who had the resources to help so many people but needed someone she trusted to help her do it right. "Equal partnership?" he asked finally. "Equal," Elena confirmed. "I handle the financial and administrative side, you handle operations and community outreach. We make decisions together. And Marcus," she turned to face him fully, her eyes shining with emotion. "I'm not trying to save you. I'm trying to build something beautiful with you. Something that matters. Something our children will be proud of." It was that last part that broke through his resistance. Our children. The words felt like a promise, like a future, like home. "Okay," he said quietly. "Let's build something together." The Elena Wright Foundation, she kept her married name for the foundation to send a clear message about transformation and survival, launched 6 months later to significant attention. Elena's story, carefully shared on her own terms, resonated with countless people who had experienced similar suffering. Donations poured in from unexpected sources, and the foundation quickly exceeded its initial goals. But the real magic happened on a smaller scale. Marcus threw himself into the work with the same dedication he'd given to his garage jobs, but this time, his labor had a different meaning. He visited shelters and spoke with survivors. He coordinated with contractors to renovate safe houses. He helped create a job training program that partnered with local businesses to provide stable employment for people rebuilding their lives. And at the end of each day, he came home to a family that was growing stronger together. Jalen and Lily had become siblings in every way that mattered. They bickered over television shows and conspired on elaborate games and defended each other fiercely against the outside world. Watching them together, Marcus often felt tears prick his eyes, tears of gratitude, of healing, of hope. A year after that rainy night when Elena had appeared on his doorstep, Marcus planned a special evening. He arranged for the children to sleep at a trusted neighbor's house, something they had become comfortable enough to do. He cooked dinner himself, nothing fancy, just the country comfort food he knew how to make, and he set the table with candles and the wildflowers that grew along the edge of his property. When Elena came downstairs, dressed simply in a soft blue dress, her hair loose around her shoulders, Marcus felt his breath catch. She was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen, not because of her clothes or her wealth, but because of the light in her eyes, a light that hadn't been there when she first arrived, a light that came from finally feeling safe and loved. "What's all this?" she asked, her voice soft with wonder. "I need to tell you something," Marcus said, taking her hands in his. "When Sarah died, I thought that part of my life was over. I thought I would raise Jalen alone, work until I couldn't anymore, and eventually just fade away. I had accepted that. Made peace with it, even." He paused, gathering his emotions. "And then you showed up. Terrified, desperate, holding your dying daughter in your arms. And even though every practical part of my brain screamed that I couldn't afford to help you, my heart wouldn't let me turn you away." Elena's eyes were glistening. "Marcus. Let me finish," he said gently. "These past months have been the happiest of my life since Sarah passed. Not because of the foundation or the financial stability or any of that, though I'm grateful for it all. It's because of you. It's because I wake up every morning next to a woman who sees me, really sees me, and loves me anyway. It's because I watch our children play together and I can picture a future that actually makes me smile. It's because you've given me something I never expected to find again." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. It wasn't fancy, he'd bought it with his own money, saved from his foundation salary over months, because this couldn't be about her wealth. This had to be about him, about his love, about his commitment. "Elena Castellanos," he said, opening the box to reveal a simple but beautiful ring with a modest diamond that sparkled in the candlelight, "I don't have much to offer you except my whole heart and my promise to spend every day of my life making you feel as loved as you deserve. Will you marry me?" Elena burst into tears, the good kind, the kind that came from overwhelming joy. She nodded frantically, unable to speak, pulling him to his feet and throwing her arms around him. "Yes," she finally managed through her sobs. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." They held each other for a long time, swaying gently in the candlelight, the future spreading out before them like an endless possibility. When they finally pulled apart, Elena laughed at the smudged mascara on her cheeks. "I must look like a mess," she said. "You look perfect," Marcus replied, sliding the ring onto her finger. "You look like my future wife." The wedding was held in the backyard of the farmhouse, now beautifully renovated but still retaining its humble charm. Elena had insisted on simplicity. This wasn't about displaying wealth, it was about celebrating love. 50 guests gathered on the property, a mix of Elena's loyal friends, Marcus's co-workers and neighbors, and survivors from the foundation who had become like extended family. Jalen served as ring bearer, Lily as flower girl. Both children practically vibrated with excitement, having been heavily involved in the planning. Jalen had insisted on writing part of the ceremony, and when Marcus heard his son's words read aloud, "My dad found my mom, and now I have a sister, and our family is complete," he openly wept in front of everyone. He didn't care. Some things were worth crying about. The reception was filled with laughter, dancing, and more joy than that farmhouse had seen in years. At one point, Marcus looked around at the gathered crowd, at Elena radiant in her simple white dress, at the children chasing fireflies across the lawn, at the friends who had supported them through everything, and felt a sense of completeness that seemed almost impossible. How had he gotten here? A year ago, he had been drowning in debt and loneliness. Now he had a wife, a daughter, a thriving organization that helped hundreds of families, and a heart so full he thought it might burst. Elena appeared beside him, slipping her hand into his. "What are you thinking about?" she asked softly. "I'm thinking about that night," he admitted. "When you showed up at my door. I almost didn't answer, you know. It was 2 a.m., I had to work in the morning, and I could think of 100 reasons to just let whoever was knocking go away." He turned to face her, cupping her cheek in his hand. "I'm so glad I didn't." "I'm glad you didn't too," she whispered. "You saved our lives, Marcus. Not just that night, every day since. You showed Lily what a real father looks like. You showed me what real love feels like. You gave us a home." "You gave me one right back," he replied. "I was just a house before you came. Now I'm a home." They kissed under the stars, surrounded by the people who loved them, knowing that whatever challenges the future held, they would face them together. 3 years later, the Elena Wright Foundation had become one of the most respected domestic violence organizations in the country. It had helped over 5,000 families find safety and rebuild their lives. Elena was frequently invited to speak at conferences and congressional hearings, using her platform to advocate for stronger protections and more resources for survivors. Marcus had become known in the nonprofit world as a hands-on leader who never forgot where he came from, still showing up at shelters in his work clothes to fix broken appliances and talk to residents like they were old friends. But their greatest accomplishment, they agreed, was at home. Jalen was now 10, a kind and thoughtful boy who wanted to be a social worker when he grew up. Lily was 8, fierce and brilliant, already showing signs of her mother's business acumen as she ran a successful lemonade stand that donated all profits to the foundation. And the newest addition, a baby boy named Samuel, born the previous spring, was learning to walk, toddling around the farmhouse while his siblings cheered his progress. One evening, Marcus sat on the porch, his favorite spot, still, watching the sun set over the Tennessee hills. Elena joined him, Samuel sleeping against her shoulder, their wedding rings catching the golden light. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't knocked on your door that night?" Elena asked quietly. Marcus considered the question. "Sometimes," he admitted. "I imagine you would have survived somehow. You're the strongest person I know. You would have found a way." "Maybe," Elena said. "But I wouldn't have found you. I wouldn't have found this." She gestured to the house, the yard, the evidence of their beautiful life together. "Every good thing I have right now started with you opening a door. That's not nothing, Marcus. That's everything." He put his arm around her, pulling her and Samuel close. "I used to think I was unlucky," he said. "Single dad, barely making it, world beating me down at every turn. Then I realized something. Luck isn't about the bad things that don't happen to you. It's about the good things that do. And what walked through my door that night was the best thing that ever happened to me." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the first stars appear in the darkening sky. Below them, Jalen and Lily's laughter echoed from somewhere in the yard, the sound of childhood joy that would echo in their memories forever. Marcus thought about everything they had been through, the fear, the danger, the uncertainty, and finally, the love that had made it all worthwhile. He thought about the thousands of families they had helped, the lives transformed by compassion and resources and hope. And he thought about the simple truth at the center of it all, that sometimes, the most extraordinary journeys begin with ordinary choices. A knock on a door. A stranger in need. A decision to help when helping seemed impossible. You never knew when your life was about to change. You never knew when a moment of kindness would ripple outward into something magnificent. All you could do was stay open to the possibility, stay true to your values, and trust that love would find a way. Marcus smiled, pressing a kiss to Elena's temple, feeling more grateful than words could express. They had started as strangers on a rainy night, a poor single father and a desperate woman fleeing danger. They had become partners, then lovers, then a family woven together by choice and circumstance and an extraordinary love that neither had expected to find. Their story was proof that life's greatest blessings often came disguised as its greatest challenges. That wealth had nothing to do with bank accounts and everything to do with the richness of human connection. That home wasn't a place, it was the people who made you feel safe enough to be yourself. And that sometimes, just sometimes, opening your door to a stranger in need could open your heart to a love beyond your wildest dreams. If this story touched you, hit like and subscribe for more life-changing stories, because sometimes a single moment of connection can remind us all of what truly matters: kindness, courage, and the transformative power of love.